All right, so get this. Today's deep dive takes us into vampire sorcery.
Okay.
We're going to crack open this book. It's called the Vampire Sorcery Bible. Have you ever heard of this?
I have, yeah. It's a trip. It's like a blend of ancient myths and magic and like a self-help book all in one.
Yeah, and it's presented as these teachings from this being called the dragon.
Right, right. Which is like, who is this dragon character?
And then it gets even better because the dragon is calling itself the father of lies.
Yeah, that's where it gets a little like, okay, who am I taking advice from here?
Exactly.
Right? Is this like for real? Should I be concerned?
Yeah, what is the deal with that?
And it kind of reminds me, it's funny, at the beginning or somewhere, I don't remember if it's at the beginning or not, it tells you to discriminate with care. Discriminate between, what's literal, what's made up, what's a metaphor.
Oh, really? It says that in the book.
It does.
Interesting.
Yeah, so you're already like kind of on edge a little bit.
So it's like a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. So it's kind of neat. As we unpack these 9 laws of magic that it presents, I think we're going to find like a lot of interesting surface level stuff, but then also a lot of like cool potential hidden depths, I think, to these laws.
Let's start then with the first law, which is reality is democratic.
Ooh, okay, this is a big one. It basically says that, if enough people believe something, it becomes real.
So we're talking about manifestation here.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
It takes it beyond just personal manifestation, right? It's saying, if a group of people and it uses the example of war. Like don't worry about war if you don't believe in it. But if enough people believe that war is inevitable, guess what? It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So it's like our collective beliefs are shaping the reality around us.
That's the idea, yeah. And it's kind of like, okay, so then what role do our own beliefs play in our individual realities, right? And it even talks about, it says, embrace the sun which rises from the words of your own mouth. So it's like bringing it back to our speech and how we talk about things. That even affects what manifests in our reality.
It makes you wonder how much power do our words actually have?
I know, right?
If you say something enough or if you think it enough.
Totally, totally.
Interesting. Okay, so then the second law is deceiving and leveraging.
Oh, yeah.
Which is interesting because, again, going back to that father of lies.
Right, right. This is where that really comes into play, right?
Is he saying that deception is a good thing?
Right. So the text argues that deception can be a tool to change perception.
Which is, that's huge if reality is just what we perceive it to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so he uses kind of an intense example where it talks about a leader who, they're in the desert and he's convincing his followers that their water skins are full when they're not.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What's the takeaway from that?
Well, that's where it leaves it open.
Yeah.
Right? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Because on one hand, he's blatantly lying.
Right.
On the other hand, maybe, they avoid a panic.
Yeah.
And maybe that changes the outcome.
Right. So is it really about the lie? Or is it about the intention behind it?
That's a good question. It's a good question.
Yeah, that's a tough one. All right. Well, let's move on to law number 3. So we've got reality is democratic. We've got deceiving and leveraging, and now we have renaming and reframing.
Yeah, this one's interesting. So this one really focuses on the power of language.
Okay.
And it's basically saying that the labels we give things shape how we experience them.
Mm-hmm.
So change the label, change the experience.
Okay, so give me an example.
Okay, so it uses the example of, renaming the Department of War to the Department of Defense.
Okay.
It's functionally it's the same department, right?
Right.
But just by changing the name, it totally changes how people perceive it.
Right, yeah.
Right,
The connotation behind it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And so it's kind of like, well, how can you apply that to your own life?
Right.
Right. Can you reframe a challenge
Yeah.
as an opportunity or a setback as a chance to learn?
It's almost like you're tricking your brain.
Kind of, yeah, for sure.
Okay, interesting.
And it actually takes it even a step further and suggests that you can even rename ailments to lessen their power.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So if I have a headache, I should just call it sparkly brain.
Well, maybe a sparkly brain. But yeah, there's something to be said for the power of positive self-talk.
Right.
Because if you're constantly focusing on the negative, it's Yeah, that's going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Okay, so instead of focusing on the negative, focus on how to make it better.
Exactly.
Okay.
Just that little shift in perspective can be really powerful, I think.
Yeah.
And that kind of ties into the fourth law a little bit, which we'll get into.
All right, so we've gone from reality being a democracy to the power of like renaming things. And now this next law is where things get a little out there, naming and commanding.
Oh yeah, this one's it's kind of like taking this idea even further, right? It's like treating objects and situations like as if they were alive almost, you know.
Okay, so you want me to start talking to my coffee maker now?
Well, maybe not talking to it, but it's more about like shifting your relationship, right?
Yeah.
It uses the example of like you hit your thumb with a hammer, right? Instead of cursing the hammer,
Right.
like why not like command it to obey your will?
Hammer, be cool.
Right, exactly. Yeah, but like, you know, in a less I don't know, aggressive way than that, right?
Okay.
It's almost like just recognizing that it's like there's energy that flows through everything, right? And so, you know, even though it's an inanimate object, like why not treat it with that kind of reverence, right?
Okay, so more about respecting everything around us.
Yeah, and the energy that flows through it, right?
Okay.
And kind of acknowledging that, even on a subconscious level, right?
Interesting. Okay. So it's not necessarily about talking to it. It's more about just like your own energy and your own intention behind it.
Exactly, yeah, and realizing that interconnectedness of everything, right? Which leads us to the fifth law, which is connecting and patterning. And this is where it gets really trippy, because this law is suggesting that time and space are illusions.
Okay, well, hold on a second. We're going full Matrix here.
Right.
Time and space aren't real.
Well, not in the way that we think, right?
Okay.
And it argues that if we can, like, break free from these illusions, we can start to see, like, the hidden connections between things and even, like, influence reality on a much, much larger scale.
Okay. So it's all connected.
Exactly, yeah. It's like this, I don't know, it's like a giant web. And we're all just like these little, you know...
Strands in the web.
Strands, yeah, exactly. And we think we're separate, but we're really not.
Okay. So how do you even begin to, like, grasp that concept, though?
Right. And that's where, like, I think it challenges us to, like, really question everything we think we know, right?
Yeah.
Like, is what we see really all there is, right?
Right.
It even goes so far as to suggest that, like, our current understanding of science might be limited by this perception of time and space.
So you're saying, like, throw out the physics textbooks?
No, not necessarily, but be open to the idea that there might be more
Okay.
than what we currently understand.
So there's more to learn.
Yeah, for sure. There's always more to learn. And that kind of brings us to the sixth law, which is forming and filling. And this is where, like, you know, it starts to get a little more practical, I guess.
This is where we put it into practice.
Yeah, like rubber meets the road kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And so it's taking all this expanded awareness of reality, you know, the interconnectedness, the power of belief, the illusions of time and space, and using it to consciously manifest our desires.
Okay, I'm listening.
Right? So it's like, you know, envisioning your desired future.
And like filling that vision with this life force, right?
Filling it with life force. What does that even mean?
Right. So this is where it gets a little vague, right?
Okay.
But it does talk about the power of breath.
Okay.
As a way to kind of access and manipulate this life force. And this sounds a lot like, you know, like prana or chi in Eastern traditions, right?
Right, okay.
So it's like, it's not enough to just like think about what you want, right? You have to like feel it. You have to breathe life into it.
So it's like the intention behind it.
Exactly. It's like aligning your thoughts, your emotions, even your breath with your deepest desires, right?
Okay, that makes sense. But where does this life force come from? Like the text doesn't really specify, does it?
No, it's very open-ended, right?
Okay.
Is it internal? Is it external? Is it something supernatural? I mean, that's all part of the mystery, I think.
Okay, so we talked about, like, you know, shaping reality with our beliefs and then how to, like, breathe life force into our desires. What's next? Well, then we get into the seventh law, opening and expecting. And this one dives even deeper into this idea of reality as a dream. But it adds this really interesting twist, which is that, like, authentic emotional expectation is actually the key to, like, aligning our dream or reality with our desires.
So it's not just, I hope this is going to happen. It's, I know this is going to happen.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like shifting from a place of hope to a place of, like, unwavering certainty.
But what if you're dealing with something that's like really heavy, you know?
Right.
Like, how do you just switch your mindset like that?
Well, that's the work,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
the text even acknowledges that. It's like, it even warns against striving too hard,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
It actually says, too often the vampire will strive to conquer his reality by strength of effort and tension. It's like, no, it's the opposite, right?
But it's like surrendering to it all the time.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about like letting go of that struggle and just like allowing yourself to be open to receiving.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense because it's like I feel like when you try to force something,
Right.
it almost backfires.
Yeah.
But if you kind of like go with the flow,
Exactly.
things tend to work out.
It's about aligning your energy with the natural flow of the universe, right?
Okay.
Which is, I think, really, really powerful.
Yeah, I'm really seeing how these laws all kind of build upon each other.
Yeah.
We've gone from shaping reality with our beliefs to like, breathing life force into our desires to now like aligning ourselves with like the universe.
Right.
It's a lot.
It's a trip.
It's a lot to take in, right? I mean, we've talked about reality being like this, like democracy shaped by belief and the power of renaming and reframing things and breathing life force into our desires.
It is wild.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And yet it's like there's a strange logic to it all.
There is.
It's like we're peeling back these layers of reality and discovering that like, whoa, there's this whole other like world of potential within ourselves and in the universe.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder though, like if we're all like shaping reality with our thoughts and beliefs,
Right.
what happens when like those realities clash, you know?
That's the big question, right? And that's, I think, where this eighth law comes in, which is dreaming and gathering. And this law suggests that like maybe our individual realities aren't as separate as we think.
So it's like we're all dreaming together.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of.
But sometimes those dreams turn into nightmares, you know?
Right, exactly. Exactly. It talks about like consciously entering a shared dream state almost.
Mm-hmm.
Like where, individual minds can actually connect and influence each other on a much deeper level. And it even hints at like specific practices or rituals for like how to access this like shared dream state.
Okay, so it's like we're all like tuned into the same radio station.
Right, exactly.
But some people are playing like heavy metal and other people are trying to chill out to like classical music. And it's like,
And it's all happening at the same time.
it's a mess.
Right. And that's where I think like this is where it gets interesting or messy, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
But it's like it seems to be suggesting that by like mastering these laws of magic, we can kind of learn to navigate this shared dreamscape
Okay.
more consciously and maybe even like influence it in a positive way.
Okay, so, but like, how do you do that? Like, I feel like there's no like user manual for collective dreaming.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's where this ninth law comes in, which is dreaming and forgetting, which is like the ultimate paradox, right? Because we spent all this time trying to like wake up to the true nature of reality, to like consciously shape our dreams. And then the final step is to like let go of the whole thing.
Wait, so you're saying we're supposed to forget everything we've learned?
No, not forget, like in a literal sense, right?
Okay.
But it's more about like integrating it so deeply
Okay.
that it becomes unconscious.
Okay.
Like, riding a bike, right? Like at first you're so conscious of every movement you make, but then eventually it just becomes effortless.
So it's like you reach this point where you're no longer limited by like the rules of the game because you've transcended the game.
Exactly.
Okay, so like practically speaking, what does that look like? Are we levitating now? Like what are we doing?
Right. Well, maybe not levitating, but like, imagine like approaching a challenge with the unwavering certainty that you could overcome it.
Okay.
Right. Like imagine like setting an intention so powerful that the universe just like conspires to make it happen. Like that's the kind of power that this text is hinting at,
So it's not necessarily about like performing magic. It's more about just like living a more magical life.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like recognizing that magic is already here
Right.
if we can just like open ourselves up to it.
This has been quite the journey, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it really is.
We've gone from like, vampire sorcery to like the nature of reality, the power of belief, surrendering to something greater than ourselves.
I know, right? It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack. And I'll be honest, like, I don't know if I have it all figured out right now.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it, right?
Yeah.
This text isn't about like giving you all the answers. It's about sparking your curiosity, making you question your assumptions, and like inviting you to explore these ideas for yourself.
So where do we go from here?
That's the beauty of it. It's up to you, right? Like this Vampire Sorcery Bible offers like a set of tools, a framework for understanding reality in a new way. But like how you choose to use those tools,
Yeah.
that's totally up to you.
So maybe that's the real magic. It's like the power to choose your own adventure,
Mm.
Create a reality that reflects like your deepest desires, your highest aspirations, like all of that.
Totally. And who knows, maybe in the process we discover that the impossible is a lot closer than we think.
This deep dive has been a wild ride, I've got to say. But if you're interested in learning more about like vampire sorcery or just like the nature of reality, which I mean, who isn't?
Right.
Then we encourage you to check out the Vampire Sorcery Bible.
Yeah, check it out, but be warned, it's not for the faint of heart, right?
No.
As the dragon reminds us, now even as you listen to these words, are you dreaming? Could it be so?
Keep questioning, keep exploring, and as always, keep the magic alive.